everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. We spend so much time around other people at work, in our families,
Hmm.
even just out in the world. But how often do we really stop and try to understand
Right.
what makes each other tick, what drives our decisions,
Yeah,
reactions, even our deepest desires?
it's so true.
This is exactly what we're tackling today using Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature as our guide.
Yeah, it's true. We often take human behavior for granted, and
Mm-hmm.
Green encourages us to think like detectives, looking for the hidden forces behind the everyday interactions we often just skim over.
Okay, so let's unpack this detective work.
Okay.
One of the first things that struck me was Greene's idea that the surface is an illusion.
Right.
He uses the example of this American student who's miserable in Paris, who would think, dude, it's Paris!
Yeah, of course.
But Greene suggests it's often our own negativity, our own internal filters shaping the experience more than the place itself.
And what's fascinating here is that we often miss this crucial detail.
Yeah.
We see the surface someone's actions, our own moods, but rarely do we question the deeper causes.
Mm.
Green is urging us to ask,
Mm.
what's below the surface? Why do we react the way we do? Are we truly seeing things objectively?
So how do we even start to look deeper? Greene talks about this shadow side we all have.
Right.
Those parts of ourselves we repress because they're not exactly socially acceptable. He uses the term passive-aggressive to describe people who might appear overly nice on the surface, but their repressed aggression inevitably comes out in other ways.
Think about someone you know who surprised you with their anger.
Oh.
Were there subtle signs beforehand? Maybe a pattern of passive resistance or subtle digs. Green argues that these repressed traits don't just disappear, they fester and emerge in ways we might not expect.
Okay, that's a little under me. It's like everyone's walking around with this hidden tiger inside.
Right.
Greene also dives into the urge to control, arguing that most of us crave control in our lives, which can lead to aggression in various forms. He uses the example of John D. Rockefeller, the oil tycoon.
Right. And Rockefeller's ruthlessness in business, according to Green, illustrates how the primal craving for power and dominance can drive people to extreme lengths.
Yeah.
But it's not just these larger-than-life figures, right? Think about a time when you felt insecure or threatened. Did you react with more aggression than you expected?
That's the thing about Greene's work. It's not just about analyzing historical figures or extreme cases.
Right.
It's about recognizing these same patterns in ourselves in our everyday lives.
Exactly.
And just when you think you've got a handle on your shadow side and that need for control,
Yeah.
Greene throws another curveball, the magnetism of the irrational.
This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
He's saying we're not nearly as logical as we like to think we are.
Okay.
He uses the French Revolution as a prime example of how quickly group emotions, fear, anger, even euphoria, can hijack our rational minds and topple even the most established structures.
So it's not just our individual irrationality, but this collective susceptibility to emotional waves that can be fascinating and terrifying all at once.
Totally.
What I find helpful is how Greene connects this to something as relevant as generational trends.
Exactly. Each generation carries a collective mood shaped by shared experiences,
Yeah.
historical events, cultural shifts.
Yeah.
Understanding this can unlock insights into why certain generations might be drawn to specific ideas, leaders, or movements. It's about recognizing the emotional undercurrents that influence our worldview.
This is where Greene's work starts to feel less like a psychology textbook and more like a roadmap for navigating the world around us. Speaking of maps, he also highlights the power of purpose, arguing that having a driving force in life, a clear why, can help us rise above our more primal tendencies, the envy, the insecurity, the need for constant validation.
He uses Coco Chanel as an example. Her ambition, fueled by a clear vision of what she wanted to create, helped her overcome a difficult start and achieve incredible success. And this isn't just about achieving outward success. It's about that inner drive, that sense of purpose that anchors us.
It's like instead of being tossed around by the winds of our own insecurities or the opinions of others, we have this internal compass guiding our choices and giving our lives direction.
Yes.
But what about those times when we feel stuck, limited by societal expectations or even our own self-imposed boundaries?
This is where Greene's law of gender rigidity comes in.
Okay.
He argues that we often box ourselves into these rigid, masculine, feminine roles, limiting our potential and even sabotaging our relationships in the process. He uses this example of a woman who's overly motherly, always nurturing and caring for others, and this often attracts men who are subconsciously seeking that dynamic.
Right.
But it ultimately leads to dissatisfaction for both because they're stuck in these rigid roles.
It's like they're both playing out a script they didn't even write.
Right.
What I find fascinating is Greene's suggestion to examine the traits we admire in the opposite gender.
Yeah.
He argues that those qualities are often within us too, just waiting to be expressed.
It's about embracing a more fluid sense of self,
Right.
recognizing that we all have masculine and feminine qualities within us, regardless of our gender identity.
Mm-hmm.
This, Greene argues, is essential for richer relationships and a more fulfilling life.
So it's not about erasing gender distinctions, but about expanding our own sense of what's possible,
Right.
what we're capable of feeling and expressing.
Yeah, go ahead.
This whole conversation reminds me of that quote often attributed to Jung about integrating our shadow side. He said something like, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious."
And that ties in beautifully with another key insight from Greene, the authority question.
Okay.
He argues that we live in a world that's constantly questioning authority, and for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
But he also suggests that true authority, the kind that inspires rather than demands obedience, is essential for any kind of social order.
It's like the difference between a dictator who rules through fear and a leader who inspires through vision and empathy.
Exactly.
But how do we tell the difference?
Right.
Greene uses the example of Queen Elizabeth I.
Okay.
He points out that she earned respect not just because of her royal lineage, but because of her actions, her character, her ability to connect with people on a deeper level.
She embodied the qualities of true authority: vision, courage, decisiveness, and a deep understanding of human nature.
Yeah.
And these are the qualities that draw people in, that make them want to follow.
It makes you think about the leaders you've respected, the ones who weren't just bosses, but true mentors or guides.
Right.
They had this ability to empower others,
Yes.
not just to wield power over them.
And Greene warns against the authority question, our tendency to automatically distrust anyone in a position of power.
Right.
While healthy skepticism is essential, this knee-jerk reaction can prevent us from recognizing and supporting truly effective leaders who operate from a place of integrity and purpose.
It's about discerning the difference between power over people and power with people. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from our shadow selves to the allure of the irrational, from the power of purpose to the complexities of gender roles, and even the nature of true authority.
And with all those complex aspects of ourselves and those around us, Greene then asks us to consider something most of us would rather avoid: death awareness. Now, before you think this is getting too dark,
Right.
he doesn't mean becoming morbidly obsessed with death.
Okay.
He's talking about a profound shift in perspective.
Okay, walk me through this. How can thinking about death possibly be a good thing?
Greene argues that acknowledging our mortality, far from being morbid, can actually be incredibly freeing and empowering. He uses the example of writer Flannery O'Connor, who, when diagnosed with a terminal illness, used that awareness to fuel her creativity.
Oh, wow.
Instead of being defeated by it, she found deeper meaning and urgency in her work.
That sends chills down my spine.
Right.
To find that kind of purpose and focus in the face of your own mortality,
Yeah.
it makes you wonder what really matters, what we'd want our legacy to be if we knew our time was limited. It's almost like that awareness of our own finiteness can cut through the noise and help us prioritize what's truly important. But how do we actually apply this death awareness?
Right.
It's a powerful concept, but it could also be easy to just brush it aside and go back to our everyday worries.
This is where Greene's insights become incredibly practical.
Okay.
He challenges us with a thought experiment. Imagine your death isn't some far-off event, but something that could happen sooner than you think. How would that knowledge change your actions today? Would you waste time on things that don't truly matter? Hold on to grudges. Postpone that dream project.
It's like a mental reset button forcing us to confront what we're putting off and why suddenly those little annoyances, the things we let steal our joy, seem pretty insignificant.
Exactly. And Greene argues that this death awareness isn't just about our own mortality.
Right.
It's about recognizing the vulnerability in everyone around us.
Yeah.
It's a call for deeper empathy and connection, recognizing that we're all this human experience together, facing the same ultimate fate.
Wow. It's like it shifts your whole perspective, not just on your own life, but on your relationships as well.
Yeah.
So instead of getting caught up in petty conflicts, we can focus on building meaningful connections, appreciating the precious time we have. But this brings up an interesting point. We've explored all these fascinating, sometimes intense aspects of human nature.
Right.
But how do we actually use this knowledge in our daily lives? How do we take these insights from the theoretical to the practical?
Well, Greene doesn't just leave us hanging with a bunch of theories.
Yeah.
He provides tools, practical strategies to navigate the complexities we've been discussing.
Okay.
It all starts with self-awareness, recognizing our own patterns of behavior, our shadow tendencies, and those deep-seated insecurities that often drive our actions.
It's like holding up a mirror to ourselves, which can be a little uncomfortable at times. Do we really want to see all those flaws and blind spots?
Greene would argue that's the only way to true growth and lasting change, and he provides some helpful strategies to ease the process.
Okay.
One that resonated with me is paying close attention to our emotional reactions. When we feel anger, resentment, or envy bubbling up, instead of blindly reacting, we can hit the pause button and ask ourselves, what deeper need or insecurity is being triggered here? What am I really afraid of?
It's like that classic advice, respond, don't react.
Right.
Easier said than done in the heat of the moment. But this idea of looking for those deeper triggers, those underlying patterns,
Yes.
that's where the real aha moments happen.
Absolutely. And here's another technique Greene suggests. Looking for patterns in our past. What kind of mistakes have we made repeatedly? What type of people are we drawn to, even if those relationships haven't always been healthy? These patterns can reveal a lot about our hidden motivations and those shadow tendencies we've been discussing.
It's like we all have a personal greatest hits album of bad decisions that we keep replaying until we finally learn the lesson.
Right.
But once we start to understand our own patterns, our own shadow side, how does that translate to dealing with other people? After all, they're often the ones pushing our buttons.
And this is where Greene's insights into human nature become incredibly valuable.
Okay.
He teaches us to look beyond the surface, beyond the words people say, the personas they project, to see the deeper forces at play.
Yeah.
It's about becoming a bit of an emotional detective.
Okay, I love that. We're putting on our deerstalker hats and looking for clues.
Exactly. Greene emphasizes the importance of nonverbal cues, body language, tone of voice, those fleeting facial expressions. They often reveal more than words ever could. He also encourages us to look at people's actions, their past behavior, to get a more accurate sense of their character. After all, actions speak louder than words.
Right, absolutely. But Greene doesn't just want us to become better at reading other people.
Right.
He also offers insights into influencing them, getting them to see our point of view, to cooperate with our plans, but not in a manipulative way.
Right. It's not about coercion,
Yeah.
but about understanding. Greene emphasizes the importance of tapping into people's deep-seated needs, their desire for validation, their fear of insecurity, even that primal craving for control. By addressing these needs in a genuine empathetic way, we can lower their defenses and build a connection that makes them more receptive to our ideas.
It's about persuasion through understanding, not by tricking them or using some sort of Jedi mind trick.
Right.
It's more about empathy than manipulation. And speaking of powerful forces, Greene keeps circling back to this idea of purpose, doesn't he? It's like he's saying it's not enough to just understand human nature. We also need to harness its power for something meaningful.
Exactly. He argues that having that clear sense of purpose, that driving force in our lives, helps us rise above our more primal self-sabotaging tendencies, the envy, the insecurity, that constant need for validation.
So it's not just about achieving some external measure of success.
Right.
It's about finding something that truly lights us up, something that makes all the struggles and challenges feel worthwhile.
And this purpose, as Greene points out, doesn't have to be something grand or world-changing.
Right.
It could be raising a family, pursuing a creative passion, or simply making a positive impact on your community.
Whatever it is, it's about finding that thing that makes you feel truly alive.
Yes.
That makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And here's the best part. That sense of purpose doesn't just benefit us internally. It also makes us more magnetic to others. It signals that we're not just driven by ego or self-interest, but by something larger than ourselves.
So we become a beacon, drawing people in with our passion and sense of purpose. Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've explored the hidden forces driving our behavior, the power of purpose, the complexities of gender roles, and even the profound impact of confronting our own mortality.
It's been quite a journey, but if there's one key takeaway from Greene's work, one overarching message he wants us to remember, it's this. The key to understanding human nature is to embrace its complexity. We're not simple creatures, easily categorized as good or bad, rational or irrational.
Right.
We're a tapestry of contradictions driven by both noble and selfish impulses, capable of both great love and, sadly, great cruelty.
And it's in that messy, often confusing, but ultimately fascinating tapestry that we find our shared humanity. And what better guide to navigate that complexity than Robert Greene's insightful exploration of the laws of human nature?
He's not offering easy answers or quick fixes, but his insights can be powerful tools for personal growth, for building stronger relationships, and for creating a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
So there you have it. We've reached the end of our deep dive into Robert Greene's work. Remember, the journey of self-discovery and understanding others is ongoing. It's a lifelong adventure. But with these insights, with these tools for self-awareness and connection, you're well equipped to face the challenges and embrace the possibilities that lie ahead. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time, ready to explore another fascinating facet of the human experience.